From the very beginning of human history, there's always been a quiet fascination with the unseen and the hidden. Long before printing presses, long before the vast libraries of modern times, people were carving signs into stone, pressing patterns into clay, or arranging symbols in ways that carried meaning only to those who understood. It is a story not only of communication, but also of mystery, a story where the known and the unknown walk hand in hand. When we look back at these messages now, they seem to whisper across time, speaking in a language that is often half familiar, half unknowable, like a dream that fades upon waking. The act of hiding meaning is as old as the act of sharing it. A symbol carved into rock might have marked a boundary, a hunting ground, or a sacred site. Yet, at the same time, it might have carried an inner layer of significance, something meant only for initiates or for the divine. Even in the earliest signs, archaeologists see the possibility of layered meaning, where what looks simple could actually conceal entire worlds of thought. This is the balance between clarity and enigma, between the light of open record and the shadow of secret knowledge. As civilizations rose, their need for secrecy grew. Traders needed ways to protect information, rulers needed ways to safeguard commands, and spiritual leaders needed ways to hide sacred wisdom from those who were not ready to receive it. And so, codes and ciphers became woven into the fabric of human history. Some were straightforward, designed to conceal military strategy or private communications. Others were far more complex, designed not only to hide meaning, but also to carry mystical or symbolic weight. When we encounter them today, we are left in awe at the ingenuity of the human mind, and equally at the mystery of what has been lost. In many ways, unsolved codes remind us of how fragile human memory can be. Languages flourish and fade. Scripts that once carried the voices of entire nations can be silenced in a single generation, leaving behind nothing but markings on stone or clay. We can look at these inscriptions with modern eyes. We can analyze them with computer models and linguistic comparisons, and yet they remain silent. They remind us that history is not a clear stream flowing endlessly forward, but rather a river full of whirlpools and hidden depths. There's also something poetic in their silence. An undeciphered text holds a unique kind of beauty, precisely because it resists understanding. The letters or symbols may seem to form patterns, hinting at meaning just beyond our grasp. Our minds lean toward interpretation, but the truth remains elusive, as though the past is teasing us with secrets we are not yet meant to know. In this way, unsolved codes are like locked doors, their very presence pulling us toward curiosity. They promise that there is something more, something waiting to be discovered if only we could find the right key. And so, as we begin this quiet journey into the world of unsolved codes and ciphers from ancient times, we find ourselves at the meeting place of light and shadow. On one side, there is what we know, the clear history of scripts, alphabets, and the progress of human communication. On the other, there is what we do not know, the silent writings, the strange inscriptions, the undeciphered texts that have endured for centuries without yielding their meaning. It is this tension between the familiar and the mysterious that will guide us forward. The story of unsolved codes is not merely a story about words or letters. It is a story about people. It is about the way humans have always longed to preserve their knowledge, their beliefs, their secrets. It is about the way meaning was sometimes meant to be hidden, reserved for the few rather than the many. It is also about loss, for with each code that remains unsolved, we are reminded of how much of the past has slipped beyond our reach. Yet perhaps there is comfort in that loss. Perhaps it is not necessary that every mystery be solved. In a world where so much is cataloged, explained, and made plain, there is a quiet peace in knowing that some questions remain unanswered. These silent messages stand as monuments to mystery, reminding us that the past is larger than we can hold in our hands. They ask us to slow down, to wonder, and to dream. In the sections ahead, we will step gently through the corridors of time, visiting some of the most intriguing codes and ciphers left to us by ancient civilizations. Some of these may one day be solved. Others may never give up their secrets. But together they form a landscape of mystery that invites us not only to think, but to feel the awe, the curiosity, the stillness of history speaking in whispers. And so we begin listening to those whispers of hidden messages, knowing that each code is both a barrier and a bridge, both silence and song. They are the unsolved riddles of humanity, and their story is one that stretches far beyond any single age into the eternal dance between the known and the unknown. Long before the first great cities rose from the earth, before empires stretched across continents, human beings were already reaching for ways to record their thoughts. Some of the earliest signs we know of were not words in the way we understand them, but marks, lines, spirals, and patterns scratched in a bone, stone, or clay. To modern eyes, these early marks may appear simple, even accidental, but scholars believe many of them carried meaning. A tally of animals hunted, a seasonal record, or a sacred symbol to call forth protection. In these lines, we can already sense a tension between the open and the hidden, between what was meant to be shared widely and what may have been reserved only for a chosen few. Cave paintings, too, may hold a layer of coded significance. The animals painted on walls in places like Lascaux or Altamira are lifelike and vivid, but scattered among them are abstract signs, that's zigzags and hand stencils, that resist easy interpretation. Were they marks of ownership, signals of hunting paths, or ritual symbols tied to beliefs now long forgotten? Some researchers propose they were part of a symbolic system, a proto-script where meaning was embedded not in the shape of the animal, but in the abstract forms around it. If so, we might say that humanity's first codes were born in firelit chambers, painted where only a select group would ever see them. As time moved forward, societies began to organize, and with them came more formal systems of signs. In Mesopotamia, the earliest cuneiform began as simple pictures pressed into clay, but even in those early stages, there were hints of something deeper. Some signs seem redundant, some strangely elaborate. Could these variations have served as markers for special knowledge, known only to priests or scribes? Archaeologists find themselves caught between what is clear, grain records, lists of goods, and what remains ambiguous, where symbols do not seem to match any obvious practical use. Here, we begin to sense how codes and secrecy were not accidents, but deliberate choices. The human urge to hide meaning may be tied as much to power as to communication. Knowledge has always been a form of control. Those who could read the earliest scripts were few, and that scarcity gave them authority. To hold the key to meaning was to stand at the threshold between order and chaos. In some ways, the very act of writing was itself a code, for it excluded the vast majority of people. Yet even within these early writing systems, there seemed to have been additional layers, signs that could mean one thing to the common eye, but something entirely different to those initiated into their deeper mysteries. The marks of early secrecy appear across the globe. In China, long before the first dynasties, oracle bones were inscribed with symbols, some clear, others obscure. They recorded divinations, questions to the ancestors, and the voices of kings seeking guidance. Yet some of these inscriptions are still puzzling to scholars. Were they shorthand notations or protective disguises to keep outsiders from understanding? In the twisting cracks of bone and tortoise shell, ancient scribes may have hidden knowledge within knowledge, layering their world with codes. In the Americas, too, patterns suggest hidden meaning. Symbols carved into rocks by early cultures may seem decorative, yet many repeat across great distances. They form networks of imagery, possibly telling stories, possibly holding ritual secrets. What makes them particularly haunting is that the key to their meaning is lost. The stones remain, but the voices that spoke through them are silent. We are left to gaze at spirals, animal figures, and abstract designs, sensing that they were more than mere art. They were perhaps messages meant to be understood only within a particular circle of people, a circle that has long since vanished. Even tally marks, simple lines etched to count, may have carried more than numerical value. Some researchers have suggested they might encode cycles of the moon, seasonal rhythms, or hunting calendars. If so, these earliest records also concealed a kind of coded timekeeping, a system not obvious to outsiders. Here again we see the dual nature of early symbols, clear enough to serve a practical purpose, yet layered enough to hide meaning from those who are not part of the intended audience. The birth of secrecy, then, is not a sharp moment in history, but a gradual unfolding. It arises wherever humans need to balance openness with concealment. The simple sign could carry multiple weights, public and private, practical and sacred. A circle might mark a sun, a season, or a god. To one person it was a record, to another it was a prayer. The layering of meaning is what transforms symbols into something closer to codes. When we look back at these ancient signs today, we can only glimpse the outer surface. We can count the lines, trace the spirals, and compare them across sites. But the inner meaning, the secret intention, is often gone. This loss is part of their mystery and part of their allure. To stand before an ancient carved stone is to feel a connection across thousands of years, to sense that a message is there, yet to know it is not fully ours to read. The earliest stages of writing remind us that secrecy is not an invention of later ages, but a constant presence in human expression. Even in its infancy, communication carried with it the desire to hide as well as to reveal. This duality would grow as civilizations grew, flowering into the complex scripts, codes, and ciphers we will encounter in the chapters ahead. For now, we linger at the threshold of history, where the first human signs shimmer between clarity and mystery, like shadows cast by firelight against the stone walls of time. Among the many great civilizations of the ancient world, the Indus Valley stands as one of the most mysterious. Flourishing more than 4,000 years ago, this vast culture stretched across present-day Pakistan and northwestern India. Its cities, Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, and others, were marvels of planning with straight streets, advanced drainage, and standardized building materials. Archaeologists marvel at the sophistication of this civilization, yet for all we know of its achievements, the voices of its people remain silent. The silence comes not from a lack of records, but from a script that no one has ever been able to read. The Indus script, found on seals, pottery, tablets, and ornaments, consists of hundreds of small symbols. They are carved with precision, often accompanied by images of animals or abstract motifs. Some of these symbols appear frequently, while others are rare. To the untrained eye, they look orderly, purposeful, almost like words strung together. And yet, despite more than a century of study, the meaning of these symbols has never been unlocked. Unlike Egyptian hieroglyphs, which yielded to the Rosetta Stone, or Mesopotamian cuneiform, which could be compared with other languages, the Indus script has no parallel, no bilingual text, no guiding key to open its secrets. What we do know is tantalizing. The script is often found on small stone seals, perhaps used in trade or ownership. This suggests it had practical value, but some inscriptions are so brief, just a handful of symbols, that scholars debate whether it was truly a language or something else. Was it a full writing system, like an alphabet or syllabary, capable of expressing speech? Or was it more of a symbolic code, a set of marks representing names, titles, or religious ideas? The debate continues, with no consensus. Some researchers argue that the script must be linguistic, pointing to repeating patterns that resemble the structure of language. Certain symbols often appear at the beginning or end of inscriptions, much like sentence boundaries or name markers. This would suggest grammar, rules, and a system more sophisticated than mere decoration. Others, however, caution against reading too much into such short texts. With so few characters in each example, the patterns may be statistical illusions rather than true language. In this way, the Indus script balances on the edge of clarity and enigma, inviting interpretation but defying certainty. The animals carved alongside the script add another layer of mystery. Bulls, elephants, rhinoceroses, and fantastical creatures appear again and again. Were these emblems of clans or families, like heraldic symbols? Or were they sacred, tied to rituals and myths we can no longer reconstruct? If the animals had symbolic meaning, perhaps the script worked in tandem with them, a code whose full message required both image and text. To us, these seals are frozen fragments of communication, half-open windows into a world that remains sealed shut. Modern technology has brought new attempts to unlock the code. Computers analyze patterns, looking for frequencies that resemble known languages. Some studies suggest the script may share features with Dravidian languages still spoken in southern India today. Others propose connections to early Indo-European tongues. Yet each theory meets obstacles. With no long inscriptions, no extended texts, it is difficult to test these ideas. Every conclusion feels tentative, balanced on a fragile foundation. The script refuses to give itself fully, as though it were designed to remain hidden from those outside its world. Beyond the academic puzzles, there is something profoundly human in the mystery of the Indus script. Imagine the scribes who carved those symbols, confident that they were preserving meaning for others to read. Imagine the merchants who pressed the seals into clay, the priests who carried inscribed amulets, the officials who marked goods with signs of authority. To them, the symbols were alive, part of daily life. To us, they're silent marks on ancient stones. The distance between those two experiences is vast, and in that gap lies both frustration and wonder. There is also a haunting thought. Perhaps the script was not meant for us. Perhaps it was a sacred language, designed to be read only by a chosen few. If so, then its very mystery is intentional. It was a barrier, not an invitation. The Indus people may have wanted their secrets to be hidden from outsiders or even from future generations. If this is true, then the script has succeeded perfectly, continuing to guard its silence across millennia. The contrast between the sophistication of the Indus cities and our ignorance of their words deepens the mystery. How could a civilization so advanced, with organized urban life and far-reaching trade, leave behind a script we cannot decipher? It reminds us that knowledge is fragile. A single missing link, a lost bilingual text, a forgotten tradition of teaching. These are enough to render an entire system unreadable. We often imagine the past as leading steadily toward our present understanding, but the Indus script is proof that history does not always yield its treasures. Some doors close forever, and yet there is beauty in this silence. The Indus script is like a riddle whispered by a civilization that no longer exists. It invites us to lean closer, to study, to dream of what might be hidden within those tiny marks. Perhaps they tell of kings and gods, of markets and rituals, of love and law. Or perhaps they speak of something altogether different, something that would reshape our understanding of the ancient world. We cannot know. What we have is the invitation to wonder, and the humbling reminder that the past is larger than we can ever fully hold. As we move forward in this journey through unsolved codes and ciphers, the Indus script serves as a perfect guide. It is both presence and absence, symbols that are right before our eyes, yet meaning that slips through our fingers. It is the voice of civilization that speaks in silence, reminding us that even in the heart of history, mystery remains. When most people think of ancient Egypt, they picture clear lines of hieroglyphs carved into temple walls, grand inscriptions celebrating the deeds of pharaohs, or the elegant texts preserved on papyrus. Thanks to the Rosetta Stone, we can now read much of what was once hidden, hearing the voices of priests, kings, and ordinary scribes across thousands of years. Yet even in this civilization, where so much has been unlocked, there remain layers of secrecy and codes within the writing system. Egypt did not only write to communicate openly, it also wrote to conceal, to protect, and to reserve knowledge for those permitted to receive it. Hieroglyphs themselves are already complex, blending art and language in ways that seem almost magical. A single symbol could be read as a sound, an entire word, or even a silent compliment, reinforcing meaning for the initiated reader. To those outside the system, the script was impenetrable. Even within Egypt, literacy was rare, and the ability to read hieroglyphs gave the scribes and priests extraordinary authority. The act of writing was deeply sacred. It was said that Thoth, the god of wisdom, had given writing to humanity. With such divine origins, the written word was never merely practical. It carried power. And where there is power, there is also secrecy. Among the earliest known religious texts are the pyramid texts, carved inside royal tombs of the Old Kingdom. These inscriptions were not meant for public display. Hidden deep within stone chambers, they were prayers, spells, and invocations designed to guide the dead pharaoh into the afterlife. Their placement itself was a form of code. They were messages for the soul, not for the living. Even when priests or family members entered these chambers, the texts were not read aloud for ordinary people. They were sacred words, veiled in ritual, meant only for the initiated to use. Later came the coffin texts and the famous Book of the Dead, filled with elaborate spells to protect souls on their journey through the underworld. Many of these spells appear straightforward, but others use cryptographic writing, where signs were altered, rearranged, or deliberately obscured. Why? In part to protect the sacred power of the words. A spell written too plainly could be misused by someone without training. By hiding its meaning in special signs, or by changing the order of hieroglyphs, the priests ensured that only those with the right knowledge could activate the spell's full force. Here, writing became a barrier as much as a bridge. Egyptian magical papyri also reveal layers of coded practice. Some instructions are written in ordinary script, but then suddenly shift into sequences of nonsense-sounding words, altered letters, or cryptographic symbols. Scholars believe these passages were intentionally scrambled, either to imitate the voices of spirits or to prevent outsiders from accessing dangerous knowledge. In this way, Egypt's writing system could transform into a cipher, a tool of exclusion. The boundary between language and magic was thin, and secrecy was part of preserving the sacred. Even in more practical contexts, Egyptians sometimes used hidden inscriptions. In certain temples, names of gods were carved in ways that were difficult to read, with unusual substitutions or cryptographic arrangements of symbols. These were not mistakes, they were deliberate. By writing the name of a god in a secret form, the priest acknowledged its sacred power while also veiling it from the unworthy. To write plainly was to expose the divine. To write cryptographically was to honor the mystery. There were also playful forms of hidden writing. Some tombs include enigmatic inscriptions, where hieroglyphs were replaced with signs of similar sound or appearance, producing a puzzle for the reader. These were not casual games. They were acts of reverence, showing that sacred texts could not be treated like ordinary words. Decoding them required both skill and permission. For the Egyptians, the effort of decoding was itself a ritual, a way of showing devotion to the gods. It is striking to note how secrecy and openness existed side by side in Egypt. On the one hand, hieroglyphs were carved boldly on monuments for all to see. On the other, those same hieroglyphs were sometimes twisted into forms meant to obscure meaning. This duality reflects the Egyptian worldview. Knowledge was light, but light had to be shielded, filtered, and controlled. Not everyone was ready to see its full brightness. For modern scholars, this presents both delight and frustration. We can read most Egyptian texts, but when we encounter cryptographic inscriptions, their layered meanings can slip beyond our grasp. We can recognize the substitutions, but not always the reason behind them. Were they intended to hide power? To create a magical resonance? To honor the gods with a puzzle of symbols? Each possibility adds depth, but rarely certainty. Even in a civilization as well documented as Egypt, there are chambers of mystery that remain locked. The story of Egypt's hidden inscriptions reminds us that writing has never been only about clarity. It has also been about control, power, and mystery. The scribes who spent their lives learning the art of hieroglyphs knew they were not just recording words. They were shaping access to sacred knowledge. What was hidden was often as important as what was revealed. As we leave Egypt's temples and tombs behind, the lesson lingers. Even when we think we understand the past, layers of secrecy remain. Beneath the surface of what we can read lies a deeper silence, a coded language meant for other eyes. And this silence prepares us for the next mystery, the Etruscans, whose language speaks with half-familiar sounds but remains veiled in shadow. North of Rome, in the rolling hills of ancient Italy, lived a people whose influence was profound, yet whose voices have faded almost completely from history. The Etruscans flourished between the 8th and 3rd centuries BCE, leaving behind art, architecture, and religious practices that deeply shaped the emerging Roman world. Temples, tombs, and treasures reveal their sophistication, while Roman writers acknowledge their skill in engineering, divination, and governance. And yet, for all their accomplishments, the Etruscans remained strangely silent. Their language, inscribed on thousands of artifacts, can be sounded out, but rarely understood. It is as if we have recovered the music of their speech, but not the meaning of their words. Unlike the Indus script, the Etruscan alphabet is not a mystery in itself. It was adapted from Greek letters, and so modern scholars can read the shapes easily. We can pronounce the words, hear the syllables, and even transcribe them into modern letters. The problem lies deeper. The language itself does not belong to any well-known family. It is not Indo-European, like Latin or Greek. It does not seem related to other surviving tongues of the region. Instead, it stands alone like an island in a sea of languages. We can hear its sound, but its meaning slips away. This creates a haunting halfway state. When an archaeologist finds an Etruscan inscription on a tomb wall, a bronze mirror, or a ceramic vessel, it can be read aloud fluently, almost musically. But the listener is left wondering what has just been said. Was it a prayer? A dedication? A legal record? We know only fragments. Some words repeat often, like avils, meaning years, usually in funerary inscriptions that record the age of the deceased. Names, too, can be identified with some certainty. But beyond these fragments, the text turns to mist. Over the centuries, scholars have tried to piece together more. Glosses in Roman texts sometimes preserve an Etruscan word, offering hints of vocabulary. Bilingual inscriptions, where the same text appears in Latin or Greek alongside Etruscan, are rare but precious. Each tiny discovery feels like a candle flickering in a vast darkness. Yet the full picture never emerges. The Etruscan voice remains muffled, audible in tone, but not in meaning. This loss is particularly poignant because the Etruscans were a people deeply concerned with the afterlife and ritual. Their tombs are richly decorated, often inscribed, filled with objects meant to accompany the dead. They left behind a world of symbols and words tied to their beliefs about what lay beyond death. To stand in an Etruscan necropolis is to stand among whispers. The walls seem to murmur with meaning, but the message is beyond reach. The silence becomes part of the atmosphere, enveloping the living with mystery. One of the most remarkable surviving texts is the so-called Liber Linteus, or linen book, preserved in an unlikely way as mummy wrappings in Egypt. It is the longest Etruscan text known, written across several strips of linen. Scholars believe it is a ritual calendar, perhaps guiding ceremonies or sacrifices throughout the year. Yet despite its length, its full meaning eludes us. We can identify structure, repetition, and possible references to deities, but not a flowing translation. The book stands as a relic of a voice we can hear only in fragments, echoing but never clear. In this way, the Etruscan language embodies the contrast between presence and absence. It is present in its letters, its sounds, its inscriptions scattered across Italy. And yet it is absent in meaning, stripped of the context that once made it alive. We are left in a liminal space, where the language is not lost entirely, but not recovered either. It hovers between the known and the unknowable, like a conversation half heard through walls. For the Romans, who eventually absorbed and replaced the Etruscans, the language was exotic even in their own time. Roman authors sometimes remarked on its strangeness, acknowledging its ancient roots. They adopted many Etruscan practices, rituals of divination, temple architecture, even the insignia of power like the fasces, but the language itself faded. By the 1st century CE, it was no longer spoken. The Romans inherited the outer shell of Etruscan culture, but its inner voice was lost. There's a certain melancholy in this silence. To lose a language is to lose a way of seeing the world. Words carry not only meanings but values, perspectives, and rhythms of thought. What did the Etruscans say about life, love, death, and the gods? What stories, myths, and poetry did they carry in their tongue? We cannot know. The echo reaches us, but the voice itself is gone. And yet, perhaps this very loss gives the Etruscans a unique allure. Unlike cultures where texts have been translated fully, the Etruscans remain partly hidden. Their silence leaves room for imagination, for wonder. To hear an Etruscan inscription read aloud today is to feel the closeness of the past, while also experiencing the distance of centuries. It is both presence and absence, clarity and shadow. The mystery of the Etruscan language also serves as a reminder of how fragile knowledge is. A language can survive for centuries, spoken by thousands, yet vanish within a few generations if not preserved. The Etruscans were not an obscure people. They built cities, traded widely, and influenced Rome itself. And yet their words faded, leaving us with only echoes. If this could happen to them, how many other voices of the ancient world are forever lost? Still, we continue to search. Each new discovery, an inscription on a bronze plaque, a carving in a tomb, offers hope that one day more meaning will emerge. Perhaps we will never unlock the full language, but we may learn enough to glimpse more of their thought. Until then, the Etruscans remain a culture whose voice we can hear but not understand, a haunting reminder of history's silences. As we leave behind the hills of Italy and the echoes of this lost tongue, we travel far across oceans to another island mystery. There on Easter Island, wooden tablets inscribed with strange symbols wait to be read. Like the Etruscan words, they hover between clarity and silence, offering a new chapter in humanity's long dance with codes and hidden messages. Far out in the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean lies Easter Island, or Rapa Nui, a place of monumental statues and sweeping landscapes that have captivated the imagination for centuries. Among the island's many mysteries, none is as quietly compelling as the Rongo Rongo tablets. Wooden planks covered with strange, intricate symbols, flowing in undulating lines that seem to shimmer with meaning just beyond our reach. Unlike the famous Moai statues, whose forms are clear and striking, these inscriptions speak a language of shadows, undeciphered yet unmistakably deliberate. They whisper of a society that once thrived, leaving hints of thought, ritual, and communication encoded in wood, but never fully revealed. The tablets are remarkable for their rarity and craftsmanship. Made from wood native to the island, the planks were carefully carved with repeating glyphs, many resembling stylized humans, animals, plants, or abstract shapes. The carvings are precise, often aligned in horizontal lines that bend and curve in unusual patterns. Some glyphs appear singly, while others combine to form more complex sequences. It is clear that these markings were not casual doodles. They were designed to convey something important, yet the meaning remains a mystery, suspended between history and imagination. Dating the tablets has been a challenge. Carbon analysis and other methods suggest they were created between the 13th and 17th centuries, coinciding with the height of Rapa Nui civilization. Yet unlike other written records in the world, the Rongo Rongo inscriptions have no known Rosetta Stone to guide modern understanding. No bilingual texts exist, no oral traditions preserve the language, and the culture itself was dramatically disrupted following European contact. Many of the tablets were burned or lost. What survived is fragile, enigmatic, and tantalizing, a direct but silent link to a vanished world. Scholars have long debated the purpose of the Rongo-Rongo script. Some propose it was a form of proto-writing, a mnemonic device to aid in reciting genealogies, myths, or ritual chants. Others suggest it may have been a fully developed writing system capable of expressing language in a structured form. The short length of most inscriptions and the repetition of certain symbols makes interpretation difficult. Patterns hint at order, but whether that order corresponds to grammar, narrative, or symbolic meaning remains unknown. Every attempt at decipherment teeters between promise and frustration. The cultural context of Easter Island adds another layer of intrigue. The island's inhabitants developed a highly stratified society centered around clans, chiefs, and religious practice. Their monumental statues, carefully aligned with celestial phenomena, suggest a people deeply attuned to both environment and ritual. The Rongo-Rongo tablets may have been part of this intricate social and spiritual fabric. Perhaps they recorded important ceremonies, kept sacred knowledge within the priestly class, or mapped ancestral lineages essential to the organization of the society. Whatever their purpose, the tablets were not casual records. They were repositories of meaning, entrusted to the hands of the few. The symbols themselves are captivating in their artistry. Some resemble humans in stylized motion, others birds or fish frozen in abstract forms. Certain glyphs seem almost like hieroglyphic punctuation, guiding the reader's eye along a complex visual rhythm. The script was read in a unique pattern called boustrophedon, where lines alternate direction, turning the reading back and forth like the path of an ox plowing a field. This unusual method, combined with the intricate glyphs, gives the inscriptions a hypnotic quality, as though the symbols are alive, shifting subtly as the observer's gaze moves along their lines. Despite countless attempts, no definitive translation has been made. Early researchers tried comparing Rongo-Rongo to Polynesian languages spoken on the island today, hoping to find phonetic correspondences. Others employed statistical analysis, seeking patterns similar to known writing systems. While these studies have uncovered tantalizing clues, the full meaning remains elusive. Every proposed interpretation raises new questions, highlighting the delicate tension between known and unknown that defines this mystery. The Rongo-Rongo tablets also evoke a sense of fragility and impermanence. They are carved on wood that has survived only by chance, preserved in museum collections or carefully protected environments. Much of the island's wooden culture has long since decayed in the humid and harsh climate. In this way, the surviving tablets are not only windows into a lost civilization, but also reminders of how easily human knowledge can disappear. Their very existence is a quiet miracle, a testament to the care of the ancient carvers and the luck of survival. There is a haunting quality to studying these inscriptions. Unlike the grand narratives of hieroglyphic Egypt or the bustling city records of Mesopotamia, the Rongo-Rongo tablets speak only in hints. They leave gaps where understanding should be, inviting speculation but offering no certainty. And yet, it is precisely this ambiguity that gives them their power. They ask us to linger, to imagine the voices of those who once held them, to consider what stories, prayers, or knowledge might have been encoded within their lines. The mystery of the tablets also reflects a broader truth about human communication, that writing is not always meant to be fully understood by everyone. In many cultures, codes, ciphers, and sacred scripts functioned as protective barriers, preserving knowledge within a select circle. The Rongo-Rongo tablets may be one of the clearest examples of this principle in practice. Their meaning was once accessible, but only to those initiated into the island's social and spiritual knowledge. For outsiders, the inscriptions remain tantalizingly beyond reach, a bridge to the past that cannot yet be crossed. As we step back from the wooden planks and the rhythmic flow of their symbols, we begin to sense a pattern that connects them to other ancient mysteries we have explored. like the Indus script or Etruscan inscriptions. The Rongorongo tablets hover between familiarity and strangeness, offering glimpses of human ingenuity and cultural depth while withholding full understanding. They remind us that even in the recorded past, silence can speak as loudly as words. In this quiet, reflective space, the tablets stand as sentinels of history, urging patience, humility, and imagination. They are more than artifacts. They are invitations. They encourage us to trace the lines, to feel the weight of time, and to recognize that knowledge, once created, may endure even in silence. The mystery is not a void but a presence, a shadow that enriches our understanding of human expression. From the remote shores of Easter Island, we now begin to turn toward the classical world, where Greek and Roman societies developed their own methods of hidden communication. Here, codes were often pragmatic, military, or political, yet they too dance between clarity and secrecy, reminding us that the human fascination with concealment has been constant across both time and geography. In the lands of the Mediterranean, where the sun warms the hillsides and the sea laps at distant shores, the Greeks and Romans cultivated a culture rich with philosophy, art, and political ambition. Alongside these achievements, they also developed methods to hide meaning, to encrypt messages, and to communicate in ways that would protect sensitive information. Here, secrecy was often practical, tied to military campaigns, political intrigue, and personal correspondence. Yet even in these pragmatic uses, there was a subtle artistry, an elegance in crafting codes that could conceal truth in plain sight. One of the earliest examples comes from ancient Greece, where the Spartans, known for their discipline and strategic brilliance, employed a device called the scytale. This tool was a simple yet ingenious cipher. A strip of parchment or leather was wound around a cylinder, and a message was written along its length. Once unwound, the letters appeared scrambled, indecipherable to anyone who did not possess a cylinder of the same size. In its simplicity lies its beauty, an everyday object transformed into a key for secrecy, turning ordinary writing into a protective barrier. The scytale illustrates how even the most straightforward societies recognize the power of control knowledge. Beyond military applications, the Greeks also experimented with more playful forms of coded communication. Philosophers and intellectuals sometimes used symbols, hidden meanings, or obscure references in texts meant for the initiated. A student or peer who understood the context could read deeper truths beneath the surface. This duality between public message and private meaning resonates with the broader human tendency to layer information, to create worlds within words that only the perceptive can access. The Romans, inheriting and expanding upon Greek traditions, refined the art of encryption in both practical and political spheres. Julius Caesar, one of the most famous historical figures, employed a simple substitution cipher to protect military orders. Each letter of the message was shifted a fixed number of places in the alphabet, rendering the text unreadable to anyone without the key. It is a system that seems modest by modern standards, yet in its time it was sufficient to safeguard the movement of troops and the secrecy of campaigns. Even the simplicity of the method reflects a calculated understanding of human cognition, an awareness that information, if not obscured, can be weaponized. Beyond Caesar's cipher, Roman writers and officials sometimes used coded inscriptions to protect sensitive information in public spaces. Certain dedications, graffiti, or legal notices included abbreviations, symbols, or rearranged letters that were intelligible only to those trained in their interpretation. These texts were often meant for small, specialized audiences, ensuring that knowledge was both preserved and restricted. The act of coding thus became a form of power, controlling who could participate in the transmission of ideas and directives. The contrast between Greek and Roman approaches to codes is striking. In Greece, there was often a philosophical or ceremonial dimension, a recognition that secrecy could be woven into the fabric of intellectual life. In Rome, the emphasis was more practical, with encryption serving as a tool of governance, diplomacy, and military strategy. Yet in both cultures, the same principle emerges. Writing can serve dual purposes: to reveal and to conceal, to communicate openly, or to protect the privileged circle of understanding. Interestingly, some Roman ciphers also involved playful or poetic elements, demonstrating that secrecy was not always grim or functional. Certain inscriptions on tombs or in private correspondence employed wordplay, rebuses, or subtle symbol substitution. These were meant to be decoded by friends or family, adding a layer of intimacy and trust to communication. In this way, codes could carry emotional as well as practical significance, strengthening bonds within a select audience while excluding the uninitiated. Greek and Roman codes also highlight the interplay between literacy and exclusivity. In societies where writing was not universal, the very ability to read served as a form of control. Ciphers amplified this effect, allowing messages to be further restricted to those possessing specific knowledge or tools. The combination of literacy and coding created layers of secrecy, reminding us that communication is rarely neutral. It carries with it social, political, and cultural weight. Yet not all Roman codes were fully understood, even by contemporaries. Historical records suggest that some messages were intentionally crafted to obscure, to challenge, or even to mislead rivals. These inscriptions might appear ordinary to a casual observer, yet hide multiple levels of meaning beneath the surface. Here, the line between a functional cipher and an intellectual puzzle blurs, reflecting a sophisticated appreciation for the art of concealment. The echoes of Greek and Roman codes resonate across time, bridging practical necessity and human curiosity. They show that the desire to hide meaning, to protect knowledge, and to control information is ancient and universal. The military, political, and social applications of codes in classical antiquity were mirrored in countless other societies, each adapting methods to its own needs and culture. Yet in all cases, the underlying principle remains the same. Some messages are not meant to be immediately understood, and some knowledge is reserved for those prepared to seek it. As we leave behind the marble forums of Rome and the olive groves of Greece, we notice a pattern emerging across civilizations. From the earliest markings in caves to the sophisticated inscriptions of the classical world, human beings have repeatedly danced along the boundary between clarity and secrecy. Codes and ciphers serve not only as practical tools, but as cultural markers, revealing what a society values, fears, and wishes to protect. In the sections ahead, we will step back to examine these patterns more broadly. A bridge between the classical world and later enigmas will allow us to see recurring themes in human communication and to reflect on why so many civilizations, isolated by time and space, develop their own ways of hiding meaning. This pause will prepare us to explore the next remarkable unsolved mystery, the Phaistos Disc, a spiral of symbols that continues to captivate scholars and dreamers alike. As we move gently from the classical world into later enigmas, a fascinating pattern begins to emerge. Across time and geography, human beings have repeatedly returned to the same fundamental methods of secrecy and coded communication. From the first tally marks scratched into bone to the complex substitutions of Caesar's cipher, civilizations have grappled with the tension between revealing knowledge and protecting it. This bridge, stretching across millennia, allows us to see a continuity of human thought. The same impulse to encode meaning, to create symbols that speak only to the initiated, arises again and again, shaped by context but guided by universal curiosity. One striking feature of this continuity is the duality of purpose. In almost every culture, codes served both practical and ceremonial functions. In Mesopotamia, clay tablets recorded trade but may have included hidden religious or political signals. In ancient Egypt, inscriptions on temple walls and papyri were designed to preserve sacred knowledge for priests and rulers, while simultaneously presenting a clear narrative to public viewers. In Greece and Rome, ciphers protected military strategy, but they also occasionally carried layers of intellectual play or poetic subtlety. Across these examples, the same fundamental principle applies. Writing can be both a mirror and a veil. Another recurring motif is the role of scarcity in reinforcing secrecy. Literacy itself has often been limited, with writing being the domain of scribes, priests, or elites. The introduction of codes amplifies this exclusivity, ensuring that even among those who could read, only some could understand the message fully. The Indus script, Etruscan inscriptions, and Rongorongo tablets all demonstrate this phenomenon. By combining scarcity with intentional obfuscation, civilizations created knowledge that was protected not only by physical materials, but also by social and intellectual barriers. A further pattern is the blending of the symbolic and the practical. Across cultures, we see that codes are rarely merely functional. Symbols carry layered meanings, sometimes communicating factual information, sometimes invoking spiritual or ritual significance. The Indus seals may have marked trade goods, but they might also encode sacred or clan-related knowledge. Egyptian hieroglyphs recorded administrative acts, yet they could simultaneously act as charms, spells, or magical inscriptions. This duality reminds us that for ancient peoples, life and meaning were rarely compartmentalized. Communication was a holistic endeavor, simultaneously practical, artistic, and spiritual. We also observe a striking visual consistency across civilizations, even when languages differ completely. Many ancient codes rely on repetition, pattern, and symmetry, creating an almost hypnotic rhythm that guides the eye. This can be seen in the looping symbols of Rongorongo, the geometric lines of the Indus script, and the formal arrangements of Greek and Roman ciphers. The repetition and visual cadence may have served mnemonic functions, aiding memory, or signaling structure to the initiated reader. They also create a subtle aesthetic that transforms functional writing into a form of art. Perhaps most compelling is the persistent allure of mystery itself. Across cultures, the act of encoding meaning generates curiosity and wonder. The existence of an unreadable inscription or an undeciphered tablet invites engagement, reflection, and imagination. It extends the life of the message beyond its immediate function, transforming it into an enduring puzzle. This is the heart of the sleep-friendly historical mystery. It is not only what is known that captivates, but what remains just beyond reach. Silence and ambiguity become tools of fascination, drawing the mind toward contemplation rather than frantic analysis. This bridge also reminds us that even when civilizations rise and fall, their coded messages can endure. The physical medium may decay, papyrus rots, wood disintegrates, stone erodes, but the imprint of human intention remains. Codes are, in a sense, immortal markers of thought. They reveal not just information, but the very human impulse to protect, to puzzle, and to preserve. Through these messages, long-dead voices continue to whisper across centuries, inviting us into a dialogue that transcends time. By reflecting on these patterns, we prepare ourselves to encounter some of the most mysterious texts in history. The Phaistos Disc, a spiral of symbols still undeciphered, will appear as part of this continuum, a single, extraordinary instance of an ancient mind seeking to encode meaning beyond the reach of casual understanding. We begin to see that no civilization exists in isolation. Each coded message is a thread in a vast tapestry, connecting human beings across time, space, and culture. As we pause in this reflective space, we sense a quiet rhythm running through history. The interplay of light and shadow, of clarity and secrecy, of knowledge shared and knowledge protected. This rhythm will guide us as we delve into the next chapter, allowing us to appreciate not only the technical ingenuity of these civilizations, but also the enduring beauty of the mysteries they left behind. On the sun-drenched island of Crete, amidst the ruins of palaces and the echoes of an ancient civilization, archaeologists uncovered one of the most enigmatic artifacts of the ancient world, the Phaistos Disc. Discovered in 1908 at the Minoan Palace of Phaistos, This modest clay disc, roughly the size of a modern compact disc, bears symbols unlike any other known script. It is stamped in a spiral, with 241 characters arranged carefully in a clockwise pattern, forming 45 distinct words separated by lines. Unlike the writing systems we have come to understand, the Phaistos Disc remains undeciphered, its meaning suspended in time, tantalizingly out of reach. The disc is immediately striking for its design. Each symbol appears to have been impressed into the clay using individual stamps, suggesting a level of standardization and planning that was extraordinary for its time. The images include human figures, tools, plants, and abstract forms, each repeated in patterns that hint at structure and order. Unlike inscriptions carved freehand, this method implies deliberate intention, a proto-printing technique centuries before movable type would appear in Europe. The disc is not merely a record. It is a crafted object, a puzzle designed to endure, to communicate something precise yet hidden. Dating the disc is as challenging as interpreting it. Scholars place it roughly in the mid-2nd millennium BCE, during the height of Minoan civilization. This was a period of remarkable sophistication. Palaces with plumbing, elaborate frescoes, and extensive trade networks across the Aegean and Mediterranean. The disc may have had a ceremonial, administrative, or religious function, yet without context, we can only speculate. Its uniqueness, no other artifact bears the same symbols, leaves it isolated, a solitary voice calling from across the millennia. Attempts to decipher the disc have ranged from the scientific to the imaginative. Some researchers have sought links with the Minoan script, while others have suggested connections to early Greek dialects, Anatolian languages, or even linguistic isolates. Statistical analysis has tried to uncover patterns of repetition that might indicate phonetic or semantic rules. Some sequences appear to repeat, hinting at formulaic language or ritual incantations. Yet no consensus has emerged. Every proposed interpretation is tentative, hovering between possibility and doubt, much like shadows that shift with the light. The disc's spiral design adds to its hypnotic effect. Unlike linear inscriptions, the spiral draws the eye inward, suggesting a journey, a rhythm, a movement of thought. One can imagine the person who created it carefully pressing each symbol, following the spiral, as if tracing not just a text but a ritual or a meditation. This design may have practical or symbolic significance. Perhaps it guided recitation or represented cycles of time, seasons, or religious practices. The spiral itself becomes part of the message, entwining form with meaning, an elegant intertwining of art and code. The isolated nature of the Phaistos Disc also makes it uniquely haunting. Unlike the Indus script or Egyptian hieroglyphs, it is a singular artifact. There is no library of examples, no bilingual inscriptions, no contemporary commentary. This makes decipherment extraordinarily difficult, and yet extraordinarily compelling. The disc invites the mind to wander, to hypothesize, to imagine the culture that could produce such a sophisticated object. In a sense, its mystery is part of its beauty. It speaks across time, not with clarity, but with suggestion, leaving space for the imagination to fill in the gaps. Its symbols themselves are deceptively simple. Human figures might represent deities, priests, or everyday people. Animals could signify traits, clans, or spiritual concepts. Abstract forms hint at phonetic or semantic markers. Each repetition, each variation, might encode emphasis, grammatical structure, or ritual significance. The interplay between repetition and variation suggests that the disc is not random. There is logic here, even if the logic eludes us. The mind senses design, intention, and meaning, yet is denied full comprehension, leaving a tension between fascination and frustration. What makes the Phaistos Disc especially relevant in our exploration of ancient codes is its embodiment of the human desire to preserve meaning beyond immediate understanding. The creators of the disc took care to produce standardized symbols, carefully stamped into durable clay and baked to endure centuries. This reflects a conscious effort to encode knowledge, ritual, or memory in a way that could survive time and distance. Even if we cannot yet unlock it, the disc achieves its purpose. It has carried a message across thousands of years, calling to us, whispering secrets we cannot fully grasp. The disc also highlights the universal human tension between revelation and concealment. Its purpose may have been to communicate only with a select audience, a priestly or royal class, just as Egyptian hieroglyphs or rongo-rongo symbols did. The ordinary observer, even one literate in contemporary scripts, would be confounded. This selective understanding is a common theme in ancient codes. Knowledge as power, communication as both gift and barrier. The Phaistos Disc encapsulates this beautifully, embodying both clarity and enigma in a single, compact object. Ultimately, the Phaistos Disc is a testament to the enduring fascination of unsolved mysteries. It reminds us that some knowledge was never meant for universal access, yet still reaches across time to spark curiosity and wonder. The spiral of symbols draws us into the mindset of its creators, offering a glimpse of a culture that valued precision, secrecy, and the aesthetic interplay of form and meaning. It sits at the crossroads of art, language, and ritual, a singular artifact whose voice continues to echo in the imaginations of all who encounter it. As we leave the Phaistos Disc behind, we carry forward its lesson. The human impulse to encode, conceal, and preserve is a constant across civilizations. From the earliest tallies on bone to the sophisticated stamps of Minoan Crete, the desire to protect knowledge and create layered meaning has shaped human history. The disc serves as both inspiration and caution. Inspiration for the ingenuity of our ancestors, caution in recognizing how much may remain forever beyond our understanding. From here, we will turn to one of the most enigmatic forms of writing in the ancient world, medieval cryptic ciphers, where letters, symbols, and ingenious tricks concealed messages in ways that sometimes survived centuries, waiting for the right mind to uncover them. This next chapter carries the story of human creativity forward, connecting the distant echoes of the past to the practical and playful secrets of later ages. As the sun set on a classical world and Europe entered the Middle Ages, the art of hidden writing took on new forms, adapted to the social, political, and religious landscapes of the time. Monasteries, royal courts, and scholars across the continent developed methods to encode information, protect secrets, and transmit messages in ways that blurred the lines between literacy, secrecy, and ritual. In this era, ciphers became not only tools of necessity, but also objects of fascination, combining ingenuity with the subtle poetry of concealment. One of the earliest and most influential types of medieval cryptography was the substitution cipher. A simple yet effective method, it replaced each letter of a message with another symbol, letter, or mark. Monarchs and generals could communicate securely, diplomats could exchange sensitive information, and scholars could preserve knowledge without fear of interception. The principle was deceptively straightforward, yet its impact was profound. A message that appeared meaningless to the untrained, could contain vital intelligence, shaping the course of events while remaining invisible to all but the intended recipient. The work of monks and scribes added layers of sophistication to these ciphers. In monasteries, where literacy was concentrated among a small elite, cryptography served both practical and symbolic purposes. Religious texts might be hidden within coded marginalia, or sacred knowledge encrypted so that only those initiated into monastic learning could decipher it. Some manuscripts include letters rearranged, inverted, or combined with astrological or symbolic markers, creating multiple layers of meaning. The act of reading these texts was itself a ritual, requiring patience, knowledge, and devotion. The boundaries between intellectual exercise and spiritual practice were fluid, illustrating how secrecy could elevate the ordinary act of reading into a profound engagement with knowledge. One fascinating example comes from the courts of Europe, where ciphers were often employed to protect diplomacy and statecraft. Kings and queens relied on messengers who carried letters in disguised scripts or used substitution ciphers to communicate sensitive instructions. In some cases, entire diplomatic protocols depended on the integrity of these hidden codes. The secrecy of letters could mean the difference between alliance and betrayal, war and peace. The stakes were high, and the ingenuity of medieval cryptographers responded to them with a blend of practicality and creativity. Beyond governance and religion, ciphers also flourished as intellectual challenges. Scholars and philosophers delighted in creating puzzles that tested the mind. Cryptograms appeared in manuscripts, on letters, and even carved into stone. These were not necessarily practical messages, but exercises in cleverness and wit, invitations for the reader to engage with language in new ways. The interplay of letters and symbols, repetition and substitution, mirrored the human fascination with patterns, rhythm, and hidden meaning, a fascination that had persisted for millennia. The Middle Ages also saw the emergence of polyalphabetic ciphers, which increased complexity by using multiple substitution rules within a single text. Unlike simple substitution ciphers, which could be broken with patience and frequency analysis, polyalphabetic ciphers created a dynamic, shifting code that was far more resistant to decryption. Such innovations demonstrate a deep understanding of both language and human perception. By introducing variation and unpredictability, medieval cryptographers created layers of mystery that mirrored the layered societies in which they lived, societies of kings and peasants, clerics and merchants, secrecy and revelation. A particularly intriguing aspect of medieval ciphers is their use in esoteric and alchemical texts. Scholars and practitioners of the occult frequently encoded formulas, mystical instructions, and philosophical treatises to protect knowledge from misuse. Letters might be replaced with symbols drawn from astrology, numerology, or sacred alphabets, turning practical instruction into a form of ritualized concealment. To the uninitiated, these texts were incomprehensible, but for the trained mind, they were rich with meaning. This duality between accessibility and secrecy, between revelation and protection, echoes the principles we have seen in the Indus script, Egyptian hieroglyphs, and other ancient codes. Even as we look at medieval ciphers, one cannot ignore the aesthetic dimension. Letters were often carefully formed, arranged in symmetry, or embellished with flourishes that made the text visually striking. The design itself could carry meaning, guiding the reader's attention or signaling structure. Writing in this period was never purely functional. It was a craft, a visual art, and a mental exercise all at once. The combination of practical encryption, intellectual challenge, and aesthetic beauty illustrates the medieval understanding that knowledge could be both protected and celebrated, encoded and admired. The study of medieval cryptography also highlights the interplay of secrecy and trust. A cipher only works if both sender and receiver understand the system. In a world without standardized communication networks, the security of a code depended as much on relationships and discretion as on the technical method. Letters carried not just messages, but the weight of responsibility. To decode improperly was to violate trust. To fail to understand could have consequences for life and death, politics, and power. The stakes imbued each cipher with significance, transforming written words into instruments of social and cultural control. By examining the codes of the Middle Ages, we begin to see how human creativity in encryption evolved across centuries. Techniques became more sophisticated, patterns more intricate, and purposes more varied. Yet the fundamental impulses remained the same: to protect knowledge, to communicate selectively, to create layers of meaning, and to captivate the imagination. These impulses connect the medieval world to the far older mysteries we have explored: the Indus script, the Rongorongo tablets, the Phaistos Disc, and remind us that the desire to encode thought is as timeless as human curiosity itself. As we leave the shadowed scriptoria of medieval Europe, we are prepared to move into the Renaissance and the modern age, where ciphers became not only instruments of secrecy, but symbols of intellectual play, political strategy, and technological ingenuity. The story continues, revealing the evolving dance between clarity and concealment that has fascinated human beings for millennia.
The Renaissance, a period of rebirth and curiosity across Europe, brought with it an unprecedented flowering of art, science, and intellectual exploration. Amid this awakening, the art of cryptography evolved in equally fascinating ways. Letters, manuscripts, and state correspondence became arenas for ingenuity, secrecy, and subtlety. As literacy spread and communication networks grew, so too did the stakes. Kings, scholars, and merchants alike sought methods to protect knowledge, preserve secrets, and convey messages only to those meant to understand them. Cryptography became both practical and poetic, a dance between reason and imagination. One of the hallmarks of this period was the increasing sophistication of substitution and polyalphabetic ciphers. Simple letter shifts, such as those used by Caesar centuries earlier, were refined into multilayered systems that challenged even the most dedicated cryptanalysts. Leon Battista Alberti, an Italian polymath, introduced a revolutionary cipher disk in the 15th century, allowing users to rotate a wheel and produce complex polyalphabetic substitutions. This innovation transformed cryptography from a simple protective measure into a flexible, dynamic system. Messages could now be encoded with shifting patterns, rendering casual interception nearly meaningless. The elegance of the mechanism reflected the Renaissance fascination with harmony, proportion, and inventive ingenuity. The use of ciphers in diplomacy became increasingly critical during this era. European courts were networks of intrigue, filled with rivalries, alliances, and betrayals. Kings and ambassadors exchanged letters filled with sensitive political content, often traveling across great distances. A single intercepted message could alter the balance of power. To protect these communications, elaborate ciphers became the norm. These were not merely technical tools. They were instruments of strategy, influencing alliances, military campaigns, and the survival of dynasties. The cryptographer was a silent guardian, safeguarding the flow of critical knowledge in a world where trust was fragile. Beyond statecraft, Renaissance ciphers found their place in the realms of science, philosophy, and alchemy. Scholars encoded experimental results, mystical formulas, and philosophical treatises to prevent misuse or misinterpretation. Figures like Johannes Trithemius and Giambattista della Porta explored the intersection of cryptography and occult knowledge, publishing treatises that combined theoretical rigor with mystical speculation. These texts remind us that secrecy was not only pragmatic, it was intellectual and sometimes spiritual, reflecting a belief that knowledge, if misused, could be dangerous. Concealment became an art form, a means of shaping who could access profound truths. Steganography, the art of hiding messages in plain sight, also flourished during this period. Messages could be concealed within seemingly innocuous letters, disguised through the first letters of each line, embedded within illustrations, or encoded in invisible ink. These methods highlight the creative adaptability of human intelligence. When direct communication was risky, subtlety became a tool. Renaissance thinkers treated communication as a multilayered experience, where meaning could exist simultaneously on the surface and beneath it, accessible only to the attentive or the initiated. Cryptography in the Renaissance was not purely functional, it was also a form of intellectual play. Scholars and enthusiasts delighted in constructing intricate puzzles and challenges for each other. Some ciphers were designed as mental exercises, intended to engage the reader's ingenuity and curiosity. The interplay between code and comprehension mirrored the broader cultural appreciation for complexity, symbolism, and hidden beauty that characterized Renaissance thought. Reading a cipher was not simply an act of decipherment, it was an engagement with creativity, logic, and aesthetic form. The period also saw a growing awareness of cryptanalysis, the art of breaking codes. As ciphers became more complex, so too did the methods to unravel them. Frequency analysis, pattern recognition, and logical deduction became essential tools for scholars, diplomats, and spies. This evolving interplay between encryption and decryption fostered an ongoing intellectual dialogue, a tension that drove innovation on both sides. Codes were never static. They were living systems, reflecting the dynamic nature of human communication and the perpetual challenge of secrecy. Another remarkable aspect of Renaissance cryptography was the integration of numerology, symbolism, and multimodal encoding. Letters could represent numbers, numbers could signify dates or mystical ideas, and illustrations could convey layered meanings. These sophisticated methods allowed messages to function on multiple levels simultaneously. A single encrypted letter might communicate political instructions to a ruler, philosophical insights to a scholar, and hidden warnings to an ally, all depending on the observer's knowledge and interpretive skill. The richness of this multidimensional approach underscores the Renaissance fascination with depth, complexity, and hidden order. The human impulse to conceal, protect, and encode knowledge reaches a peak during this period, yet the motivations are varied. Some ciphers are utilitarian, others playful, some political, others spiritual. Across all of them, however, the underlying principle remains constant: the balance between revelation and concealment, between clarity and mystery. Each encoded message is a reminder that language is not merely a vehicle for information, but a vessel of human intention, creativity, and social dynamics. By the close of the Renaissance and the dawn of the early modern period, cryptography had become an indispensable part of human culture. It was no longer limited to a select few scribes or priests. It had entered the arenas of diplomacy, scholarship, commerce, and intellectual pursuit. The lessons of secrecy, creativity, and the delicate tension between known and unknown would continue to evolve, setting the stage for the sophisticated ciphers, codes, and cryptographic machines of the modern era. As we leave the illuminated manuscripts, cipher discs, and hidden messages of the Renaissance, we prepare to enter a world of accelerating technology, where the human desire to hide and reveal knowledge finds new forms in the age of machines, encryption, and global communication. The story of codes and ciphers is far from over. It is merely entering its next, exhilarating chapter. Tucked away in the quiet corridors of history, there exists a book unlike any other, a manuscript whose very existence seems to defy explanation. Known today as the Voynich Manuscript, it has captivated scholars, cryptographers, and dreamers for over a century, yet its secrets remain impervious to understanding. Discovered in 1912 by the rare book dealer Wilfrid Voynich, the manuscript is thought to date back to the early 15th century. Its pages are filled with an unknown script, strange diagrams, and curious illustrations that appear at once organic and alien. The text spirals with intention, yet the language resists all attempts at translation, offering a whisper of meaning that never solidifies into certainty. The manuscript is a visual and intellectual labyrinth. Every page presents a combination of intricate, flowing script and mysterious drawings. Plants that seem familiar yet unclassifiable, circular diagrams reminiscent of astrological charts, human figures engaged in obscure activities, and elaborate systems of lines and shapes. The richness of detail suggests purpose and design, yet the meaning behind it eludes us entirely. The script itself, consisting of flowing glyphs not found in any known language, exhibits patterns, repetition, and apparent syntax. Statistical analysis confirms that the text behaves much like a real language, but any attempt to assign meaning has led to tantalizing dead ends. Scholars have proposed countless theories regarding the manuscript's origin and purpose. Some suggest it was a pharmacopoeia or herbal guide, intended to record knowledge of plants, medicines, and cures. Others believe it to be an alchemical treatise, encoded to protect secrets of chemistry and transformation. There are those who speculate it was a constructed language, an intellectual exercise, or even an elaborate hoax. Each theory captures part of the imagination, yet none has yielded definitive proof. The Voynich manuscript remains suspended between possibility and enigma, an artifact that continually challenges assumptions about language, knowledge, and human creativity. The illustrations, more than the text, draw many observers into their spell. Plants twist in impossible shapes, as though grown in a dream rather than in soil. Celestial charts and diagrams suggest observation and understanding of the cosmos, yet the methods and symbols are unfamiliar. Human figures, often female, appear in strange ritualistic contexts, sometimes immersed in what resembles baths or pools, connected by intricate plumbing or geometric networks. These images evoke both wonder and unease, suggesting a world partially familiar yet deliberately obfuscated, a universe created to be understood by an initiated few or perhaps by no one at all. Attempts at decoding the manuscript have been meticulous and varied. Linguists, mathematicians, cryptographers, and computer scientists have pored over the text, employing frequency analysis, pattern recognition, AI models, and historical comparisons. Yet the Voynich manuscript resists every method. Unlike classical ciphers, it does not yield to simple substitution or polyalphabetic strategies. Unlike known languages, it contains no discernible cognates or grammar familiar to scholars. Its resistance to interpretation enhances its allure, turning it into a mirror for human curiosity. The more we try to understand it, the more it reflects our desire for meaning. The manuscript also embodies the interplay between human ingenuity and mystery. Its script may encode actual language, a sophisticated cipher, or an invented symbolic system. The effort required to create it, with hundreds of meticulously written pages and hundreds of unique glyphs, demonstrates remarkable dedication and intelligence. Whoever created it invested immense effort, suggesting that the manuscript was intended to endure, to communicate something significant, even if that significance remains hidden to us. In this way, the Voynich Manuscript is both a product and a testament to human creativity, a bridge across centuries connecting minds separated by time and culture. Its enigmatic nature has also given rise to philosophical reflection. What does it mean for a text to exist without comprehension? How do we engage with knowledge that resists decoding? The Voynich Manuscript occupies a liminal space, hovering between presence and absence, understanding and mystery. It invites contemplation rather than solution, drawing the mind into a meditative engagement with symbols and images. Like the undeciphered scripts of the Indus Valley or the Rongorongo tablets, it reminds us that human communication is not always linear, and that the act of encoding can itself be an art, a ritual, or a game. The manuscript's enduring mystery is compounded by its isolation. Unlike the Phaistos Disc or medieval ciphers, which often exist alongside other examples or context, the Voynich Manuscript is largely singular. There are few comparable artifacts, no bilingual keys, no surviving commentary. This isolation elevates its aura of secrecy, forcing each observer to navigate its puzzles alone. Its enigmatic power is a testament to the human imagination. The manuscript does not merely record knowledge, it challenges, teases, and stretches the mind, creating a space for reflection that spans centuries. Finally, the Voynich Manuscript exemplifies a timeless human impulse, the desire to encode meaning, to preserve knowledge, and to create something that can endure across generations. It embodies the tension between revelation and concealment, known and unknown, clarity and shadow. Its pages whisper across time, suggesting worlds that may have existed, ideas that may have been understood by someone long gone, and knowledge that may never be fully recovered. In the quiet attention it demands, it encourages contemplation, patience, and awe, a reminder that mystery itself can be as meaningful as understanding. As we close the pages of the Voynich Manuscript, we feel the continuity of human curiosity. From the earliest undeciphered scripts to the elaborate codes of Renaissance Europe, the pursuit of hidden meaning has been a constant, reflecting not only our need to communicate but also our desire to protect, puzzle, and imagine. The story now moves toward the modern era, where the development of advanced codes, cryptography, and encryption will transform how humans hide and reveal information, linking centuries of ingenuity in a single, ongoing narrative of secrecy and discovery. As the world moved from parchment and ink to machines and wires, the art of secrecy evolved into a science. Modern cryptography, which emerged in the early 20th century, carries forward the ancient human impulse to hide and protect knowledge, yet it operates at a scale and complexity that the ancients could scarcely imagine. From the mechanical ciphers of the world wars to the encrypted data of the digital age, modern cryptography bridges history and technology, demonstrating the timeless tension between revelation and concealment. One of the most famous chapters in modern cryptography began during World War II with the German Enigma machine. The Enigma was not merely a cipher, it was a mechanical marvel, a device that scrambled messages with rotating wheels, electrical circuits, and plug boards, creating an astronomical number of possible combinations. A single letter in a message could be substituted differently each time it appeared, producing codes that were seemingly unbreakable. For the Allies, deciphering Enigma was a monumental challenge, requiring not only ingenuity but also meticulous analysis, collaboration, and the early use of computational thinking. The success in breaking Enigma at Bletchley Park, led by Alan Turing and his colleagues, marked a turning point in both warfare and the history of cryptography. It demonstrated that human determination, logic, and creativity could confront even the most formidable coded systems. The era of mechanical ciphers also revealed the profound interplay between secrecy and information. Messages carried more than content. They carried strategy, life-and-death decisions, and the fate of nations. Cryptography became a powerful tool in shaping history, highlighting the stakes of secure communication in unprecedented ways. The work at Bletchley Park shows that behind every cipher lies human effort, intellect, and persistence, a reminder that even in an age of technology, the human mind remains central to understanding and protecting information. Following the war, cryptography entered the digital age. Computers, capable of performing calculations at unimaginable speeds, transformed encryption from a mechanical puzzle into an algorithmic system. Public key cryptography, invented in the 1970s, allowed secure communication over unsecured networks, a breakthrough that underpins modern digital security. Today, encryption protects everything from banking transactions to private messages, creating a virtual space where secrecy and trust coexist. The principles, however, remain deeply rooted in the ancient human desire to encode meaning, preserve information, and control who may access it. Modern cryptography also mirrors earlier practices in its emphasis on layers and patterns. Algorithms often employ multiple steps of substitution, permutation, and mathematical transformation. Just as the Rongo tablets, the Phaistos Disc, and medieval ciphers combined symbols, sequences, and repetition, digital codes rely on complexity, redundancy, and structure to protect meaning. The mathematical sophistication may be new, but the foundational idea, that the act of encoding can create both clarity for the intended and mystery for the observer, is timeless. Another continuity is the interplay between secrecy and trust. In ancient societies, ciphers required both sender and receiver to share knowledge of the code. Today, digital encryption depends on shared keys, secure protocols, and authentication. The principle remains: communication is not just about transmitting information, but about ensuring that it is understood only by those intended. The human element, attention, integrity, and comprehension, remains essential, echoing the lessons of every undeciphered script, hidden manuscript, and coded letter throughout history. Cryptography also continues to inspire curiosity and creativity. Even in the modern era, puzzles, challenges, and capture-the-flag exercises echo the playful intellectual engagement found in Renaissance cryptography. Enthusiasts explore algorithms, test vulnerabilities, and push the boundaries of decoding, merging rigorous logic with imagination. The aesthetic dimension, patterns, elegance, and simplicity, remains, connecting the practical with the poetic, just as ancient glyphs and manuscript illustrations combined beauty with function. Yet, modern cryptography also confronts new philosophical questions. As codes become more powerful, they challenge notions of privacy, surveillance, and knowledge control. The balance between security and access, secrecy and transparency, is increasingly critical in our interconnected world. This tension reflects the same impulses that shaped codes in ancient and medieval societies, but on a global, instantaneous scale. Human curiosity, ingenuity, and caution continue to shape the development and application of encryption, demonstrating the enduring relevance of centuries-old lessons about secrecy and communication. Ultimately, modern cryptography is a bridge connecting past and present. From the carefully carved glyphs of the Indus Valley to the encrypted digital messages of today, the human desire to encode meaning persists. Each generation adapts the methods, scales the complexity, and refines the purpose, but the core fascination remains unchanged: to hide, to reveal, to challenge, and to communicate selectively. In the calm reflection of this continuum, we recognize a lineage of thought stretching across millennia, linking scribes, cryptographers, and programmers through a shared quest to navigate the interplay of clarity and mystery. As we pause in this space of quiet contemplation, we see that modern cryptography, while technical and mathematical, resonates deeply with the same poetic allure found in ancient inscriptions. It reminds us that every cipher, every code, every hidden message is not merely a puzzle but a reflection of human culture, intelligence, and imagination. From the sunlit terraces of Crete to the glowing screens of our digital world, the thread of curiosity, secrecy, and ingenuity continues unbroken. In the following section, we will step back to reflect on the broader themes that unify all these mysteries: the human fascination with hidden knowledge, the tension between the known and the unknown, and the quiet wonder that these codes, scripts, and ciphers inspire across time and space. This closing reflection will allow us to appreciate the full arc of our journey through the history of coded communication. As our journey through the labyrinth of human communication draws toward its quiet conclusion, a pattern emerges, one that is both subtle and profound. Across millennia, across continents and civilizations, one constant persists: the human fascination with hidden knowledge. From the earliest tallies scratched into bone, to the Phaistos Disc spiraling with undeciphered symbols, to the complex digital encryptions of our modern age, we see an enduring tension between revelation and concealment, clarity and mystery. This tension is not merely practical, it is deeply poetic, touching on our curiosity, imagination, and the ways we seek connection with others across time and space. Throughout history, secrecy has served multiple purposes. Sometimes it was a practical necessity, messages about military strategy, political intrigue, or trade needed to be protected from prying eyes. At other times, secrecy was symbolic, ritualistic, or intellectual, designed to elevate knowledge beyond the reach of the uninitiated. Monks in medieval scriptoria hid mystical wisdom in coded marginalia, Renaissance scholars embedded layered meanings within ciphered manuscripts, and modern cryptographers employ mathematical algorithms to secure digital communication. In all cases, the act of hiding meaning reflects a deep understanding of human nature, that knowledge is not only power, but also something precious, fragile, and worth protecting. Equally fascinating is the human response to secrecy. Across cultures, the allure of the unknown sparks curiosity and creativity. Undeciphered scripts invite us into contemplation, compelling us to imagine the world of their creators. The Phaistos Disc beckons us to Crete's ancient palaces, suggesting rituals and ideas lost to time. The Voynich Manuscript draws us into an enigmatic garden of impossible plants and celestial charts, challenging our expectations of language and logic. Even modern encryption, while grounded in mathematics, carries an aesthetic and intellectual charm that captivates those who explore its codes. Mystery, in every form, transforms the act of communication into a dialogue that stretches beyond the immediate, touching imagination, intuition, and wonder. Hidden knowledge also teaches us humility. For every code cracked, there are countless more that resist understanding. Ancient scripts like Rongo Rongo, the Indus symbols, and the undeciphered portions of Linear A remind us that time and context can erase comprehension, leaving only traces and echoes. The Voynich Manuscript resists translation even in an era of computational power. Modern cryptography challenges even the most sophisticated analysts with algorithms that defy brute force solutions. These mysteries remind us that human ingenuity is boundless, yet always confronted by limits, technical, temporal, and cognitive. They invite patience, reflection, and the appreciation of process over immediate solution. The aesthetic and philosophical dimensions of secrecy are equally compelling. Codes and ciphers are not merely functional, they are often beautiful. The spiral of the Phaistos Disc, the flowing script of the Voynich Manuscript, and the intricate design of Renaissance cipher wheels reflect an awareness of form, pattern, and rhythm. Secrecy itself can be art, creating layers of meaning that enrich human experience. We find pleasure not only in solving puzzles but in the encounter with symbols, structure, and intention. The hidden message is a mirror. It reflects both the mind of the creator and the curiosity of the observer. There is also a social dimension to the human fascination with hidden knowledge. Codes often define communities of understanding, creating circles of inclusion and exclusion. Ancient scripts were readable only by the literate or initiated. Monastic ciphers could only be understood by those trained in spiritual or scholarly practices. Modern encryption relies on shared keys and protocols. Secrecy structures relationships, delineates authority, and cultivates trust. Across all epochs, the act of encoding knowledge is intertwined with human interaction, signaling both protection and connection. Perhaps most importantly, hidden knowledge connects us across time. When we study undeciphered scripts, ancient ciphers, or modern encryption, we engage in a dialogue with minds separated by centuries. We are drawn into the thought processes, creativity, and challenges of those who came before us. Each artifact, each manuscript, each code is a testament to the universal human desire to communicate while preserving meaning. Even when the message itself remains elusive, the act of trying to understand becomes a shared experience, a bridge linking past, present, and future. This reflection also highlights the balance between wonder and comprehension. Some knowledge is meant to be grasped, some to be pondered, and some to remain forever beyond reach. The tension between what is revealed and what is concealed fuels imagination, inquiry, and awe. As we trace the history of human codes, from ancient civilizations, through the classical world, the Middle Ages, and Renaissance, to the digital era, we recognize a continuous thread. The interplay between clarity and mystery is essential to the human experience. It is a rhythm that shapes thought, culture, and creativity, a cadence that invites us to listen, observe, and reflect. In the end, the fascination with hidden knowledge is not simply a desire to uncover secrets. It is a meditation on human ingenuity, a recognition of the delicate interplay between expression and concealment, and an appreciation for the artistry of communication. From undeciphered symbols etched in clay to encrypted messages traveling invisibly through global networks, these codes and ciphers reveal the richness of human thought, the depth of cultural expression, and the enduring power of mystery. As we drift toward the quiet of reflection, the story of coded communication leaves us with a sense of continuity and wonder. Every undeciphered script, every ingenious cipher, every encrypted digital message is a testament to the human mind's capacity to imagine, protect, and communicate. In this timeless dance between light and shadow, the known and the unknown, we are reminded that mystery itself is not a void, but a space for curiosity, contemplation, and connection, a space where the whispers of the past meet the inquiries of the present, softly inviting us to listen, ponder, and dream. As we arrive at the final chapter of this journey through the quiet corridors of history and mystery, there is a profound sense of stillness, a space to reflect on the countless messages, symbols, and codes that have shaped human understanding. Across time, civilizations have sought to encode thought, preserve knowledge, and convey meaning in ways both practical and poetic. From the earliest tally marks on bone to the intricate algorithms of modern digital encryption, one truth remains. The act of hiding and revealing is as much about the mind and imagination as it is about communication. The tapestry of human ingenuity in secrecy is vast. We have seen the elegant spirals of the Phaistos Disc, whose symbols continue to elude comprehension, yet suggest deliberate design and purpose. We have wandered through the pages of the Voynich Manuscript, a garden of enigmatic plants and celestial charts, defying translation while inviting contemplation. We have explored medieval and Renaissance ciphers, where letters danced in cryptic patterns, balancing practicality with aesthetic and intellectual beauty. And we have glimpsed modern cryptography, where algorithms and codes protect the privacy of billions, yet echo the same principles of concealment and trust that guided scribes and monks centuries ago. Through these explorations, a central theme emerges. Mystery itself is a form of connection. Each undeciphered symbol, each carefully constructed cipher, each hidden message draws the mind inward, inviting reflection, curiosity, and wonder. The beauty of these enigmas lies not only in the knowledge they may contain, but in the active engagement they provoke. They remind us that human thought is a continuum, linking past and present, and that the search for understanding is as meaningful as understanding itself. The human fascination with hidden knowledge is also deeply personal. There is a quiet joy in attempting to unlock a puzzle, a gentle thrill in recognizing patterns, and a meditative calm in pondering symbols that resist immediate explanation. This is why the history of codes and ciphers is particularly suited for a sleep-friendly narrative. It encourages gentle attention, curiosity without urgency, and reflection without pressure. In this calm space, the mind can wander freely, tracing connections across time, culture, and imagination, while resting in the soft rhythm of curiosity and discovery. Even as some secrets remain permanently beyond our grasp, their presence enriches our understanding of humanity. Codes and ciphers are not merely practical tools. They are reflections of culture, creativity, and the enduring desire to communicate meaningfully while safeguarding knowledge. The effort, thought, and care invested in creating these messages speak across the centuries, reminding us of the intelligence, dedication, and subtle artistry of those who came before. Each encoded message, whether deciphered or not, is a whisper from the past, inviting us to listen attentively, to ponder, and to marvel. Moreover, these mysteries encourage a broader contemplation of our own approach to knowledge and curiosity. Just as ancient civilizations balanced secrecy and revelation, we too navigate the interplay of what is known and unknown in our lives. The act of pondering an undeciphered script or an enigmatic manuscript becomes a meditation on patience, humility, and imagination. It teaches us that not all questions demand immediate answers, and that some forms of wisdom are discovered not in the solution, but in the gentle unfolding of inquiry itself. In this final reflection, we recognize the universality of the impulse to encode meaning. It transcends geography, language, and epoch. From the Minoan palaces of Crete to the monasteries of medieval Europe, from Renaissance courts to the encrypted networks of today, humans have sought to create messages that endure, that challenge, and that inspire. Each example is a testament to the continuity of curiosity and the subtle artistry of intellect. They demonstrate that communication is not simply about transmitting information, but about shaping experience, fostering contemplation, and connecting minds across space and time. As our journey closes, there is a gentle invitation to let these mysteries linger in thought, to allow the mind to rest within the quiet rhythm of unknown symbols and hidden patterns. There is peace in acknowledging that some secrets are meant to remain veiled, that mystery itself carries its own kind of wisdom. By listening, observing, and reflecting, we participate in an ongoing dialogue that spans centuries, a dialogue of thought, imagination, and wonder that is timeless and enduring. Finally, we are reminded that the human story is enriched not only by what we know but also by what we have yet to uncover. The undeciphered scripts, the cryptic manuscripts, and the sophisticated codes of the modern world all invite us into a space of curiosity, meditation, and quiet awe. They encourage patience, reflection, and gentle engagement, perfectly suited for the calm, sleep-friendly rhythm of history and mystery. In their enduring silence, these codes speak volumes about our shared past, our collective imagination, and the timeless human desire to connect, conceal, and contemplate. As we close this chapter and drift toward rest, let the echoes of these messages remain with you. Feel the continuity of thought stretching across millennia, the artistry of secrecy, and the gentle allure of the unknown. In the quiet, there is understanding, in the mystery, there is connection, and in the act of contemplation, there is a shared journey through the vast, unfolding tapestry of human history.